The Russian authorities have firstly claimed that they have detained a suspect in the killing of the senior military officer, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, a major development in the most prominent political assassination case in the country since the start of the war with Ukraine. Now, the suspect, a 29-year-old citizen of Uzbekistan, whose name was not released, was detained in a village right outside Moscow. Russia also said that the detainee had confessed that Ukrainian intelligence agencies recruited him to kill General Kirillov. Now, an official with Ukraine's security service, known as the SBU, said that Ukraine had been responsible for the killing, which took place in central Moscow. Then again, according to Russian authorities, the detainee traveled to Moscow and placed the bomb under a scooter near the general's home. He also installed a camera inside a parked rental car that transmitted the general's movement to the intelligence agents back in Ukraine. Well, this person, he was promised $100,000 and safe passage to Europe for carrying out the job. That did not happen. An aide to the general was also killed when the bomb was detonated. 2 people were killed in that scooter blast as well.
This is the unnamed Uzbek man Russia says has confessed to planting and detonating a bomb which killed top general Igor Kirillov. Russia's investigative committee said on Wednesday the suspect told them he came to Moscow to carry out an assignment for Ukraine's intelligence services. A video of his confession was published by the Baza news outlet, which is known to have sources in Russian law enforcement circles. It was not clear what conditions he was speaking under, and Reuters could not immediately verify the video's authenticity. Kirillov, Russia's chief of nuclear, biological and chemical protection troops, was killed outside his apartment building on Tuesday, along with his assistant, when a bomb hidden in an electric scooter went off. Ukraine's SBU intelligence service took responsibility for the killing. Kirillov is the most senior Russian military officer to be assassinated in Russia by Ukraine. Ukraine accused him of being responsible for the use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops, something Moscow denies. Maria Zakharova, a spokeswoman for Russia's foreign ministry, said Moscow would raise the assassination at a session of the United Nations Security Council on December 20. Everyone involved in the killing would be found and punished, and Moscow would not be intimidated, she said.
All right, then, let's begin dissecting the Russian Gambit. Joining me here on the broadcast is Ambassador Jayant Das Gupta, former Indian diplomat. A very warm welcome to you, Ambassador. And Major General Sudhakarji, Defense and Strategic Affairs expert. A very warm welcome to you, General. Always a pleasure to have you with us on Newsline. General, I'm going to quickly come to you first because the suspect's citizenship of Uzbekistan, that is consequential as well. A combination of nationalist war fervor and the participation of citizens of Central Asian countries in recent terrorist attacks have led to a rise in xenophobia and a tightening of immigration laws in Russia as well. But before all of that, given the information, the disinformation, no matter how you want to call it, between Ukraine and Russia over the last 2 years or so, how reliable are the intelligence sources? And what is the implication of the latest developments given this Uzbek national being hired by the SBU in Ukraine? There's a proper camera in place as well, and no security on this residential area and street in Moscow.
Good evening, Kabir. Is that question meant for me?
Absolutely, General. Go on.
Kabir, firstly, good evening. Thank you for getting me to your show, and compliments to the co-panelists, a very distinguished ambassador, and also the viewers. Just allow me to reflect my thought process, because a 3-star general, that too commanding or responsible for a strategic resource, is no mean an appointment or a person. He's a big man, very high-profile personality. And to say that close to the residence, a scooter was parked and the camera was beaming the live information about the general's movement, one is quite mindful of the fact whether one is part of NATO forces or otherwise any country. A 3-star general is a 3-star general. There is an ecosystem which is responsible for his security. I don't buy the game. I feel that, as per my assessment, I may be wrong, there is a very deep penetration which has taken place into the existing security apparatus and the architecture in Russia, which should be very a matter of serious concern. Because if a high-profile general of this kind has been neutralized, then it could be anybody in the vertical or the channel. Putin may be the next option. So now this is one part I would cover. Second part I wish to highlight is that until Donald Trump assumes presidency, this balance of 33 odd days are going to be very chaotic. As it is, the geopolitics of the world order is going through a huge churn. There is so much of turbulence all over, whether it is Middle East or anyway. Europe is going through a crisis without a conflict, I would say, except for the Ukraine part, because of the oncoming winter, because of the price rise, because of the crisis which has actually been thrown up because of Germany and France. They are the two leaders, economic leaders in Europe. So likewise, all over the world, something or the other is happening. But Russia's part, third point I wish to highlight is that here is something. On one hand, Zelensky has been heard to have offered that he's prepared to cede or forego that 18% or 20% of land which is under occupation of Russia, although he's making his stakes higher. He said the western portions of the land should be part of the NATO. That's a matter of bargaining and negotiation. On the other hand, he's using the tactical missiles provided, the deep penetrating tactical missiles provided by USA. Here is a tactical, strategic, operational blunder which has been committed by none other than USA, and therefore it's provoking enough for Russia to take any measure. But now the answer is Russia going to take any impulsive kind of decision? To me, as a military general, I personally feel now is the time to exercise strategic restraint. There is somebody who's talking of peace and harmony and some kind of stability after such an extended period of pandemic, followed by Ukraine-Russia war, followed by the Middle East. So there is, let's give a peace a chance, I personally feel. So therefore, the
You know
options
what, General?
before.
I mean, many thanks for those opening comments. Let me bring in Ambassador Jayant Das Gupta here as well. Ambassador, how significant is the arrest of this Uzbek national? What does this tell us about Ukraine's own intelligence paraphernalia? I mean, he was arrested right outside a village. This is on the outskirts of Moscow. But then again, an Uzbek national, xenophobia in Central Asia as well. What does this tell us about the significance of the Russian gambit here?
I agree entirely with General's assessment that a three-star general, especially who was leading the radiological, biological, and chemicals weapons, structure in the Russian army in their fight against Ukraine, that he had such a lax security that somebody could park a scooter and then he was being surveilled through a car and that it was being monitored from Dnipro. So all these things point to a very lax security, setup in Russia, and other people could also be vulnerable. So that is the first point that I agree with entirely. The second point is that the US had criticized General Igor Kirillov earlier because Kirillov had come on television, etc., and criticized the US for having, started the Mpox and COVID virus pandemics. And, the US had come down heavily on General Kirillov's statements. And, they said that this was not called for. The US, Canada, and the UK had axe to grind against General Kirillov. And the US in May had also accused General Kirillov of unleashing chemical weapons, especially a chemical called chloropicrin, which had not been used since World War I in warfare. So there were things which were stacking up against General Kirillov, whether they were correct or not, that is another issue. And this assassination is a result of this. The third point is, and I agree entirely again with the general, that it's just another 33 days for President-elect Trump to again come back to office. And he has yesterday, I think, again spoken about ceasefire in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have, Zelensky has mentioned that he is prepared to negotiate. And of course, he is prepared to cede territory on a temporary basis. That Crimea and the western eastern part of Ukraine, which has a very large population of Russian-speaking people, over which Russia lays legitimate claims, that part will be ceded temporarily, and then there would be negotiations, and of course the western part would go to NATO. So he is shown that he is willing to come to the negotiating table and talk. And with President Trump's coming to the White House, it is anticipated that the kind of uh, flow of resources, including arms, money, etc., which is flowing to Ukraine, will undergo a very pronounced shift, and that will perhaps compel or put pressure on Zelensky to negotiate in a very serious manner with Russia.